Chapter 9. Fate of the Jedi. Secrets, Sith, and the Lost Tribe. Asterisk. In the aftermath of the Second Galactic Civil War, directly precipitated by Darth Krayt's tyranny, the Galactic Alliance sought to assign blame and restore public confidence. The burden of Jacen's crimes and the deep-seated fear of the Skywalker legacy fell heavily upon the Grand Master of the Jedi Order, despite his unwavering commitment to the light and his efforts to stop his nephew. Luke Skywalker was controversially exiled from the core worlds by the Galactic Alliance government. This was a political maneuver designed to assuage public fear and project an image of accountability, but for Luke, it was a painful and unjust decree. Stripped of his formal authority within the Alliance structure, he was nonetheless determined to understand the depths of Jacen's corruption and prevent such a tragedy from ever happening again. Luke did not embark on this solitary quest alone. His only son, Ben Skywalker, now a formidable Jedi Knight in his own right, chose to accompany him. Ben, who had deeply admired his cousin Jaqen and witnessed his terrifying transformation firsthand, felt an intense personal need to understand what had driven Jaqen to such darkness. Together, father and son embarked on a desperate and perilous journey to uncover the true nature of Jacen's transformation. Their quest was not merely for vengeance or justice, but for profound understanding. They delved into forbidden Jedi archives, sought out ancient foresights, and followed faint, unsettling trails across the galaxy, hoping to find answers to the pervasive dark side corruption that seemed to infect everything they touched. Their bond, already strong, was forged anew in the crucible of this shared mission, as they faced both external dangers and the haunting shadows of their family's past. Their journey was marked by a pervasive sense of growing instability across the galaxy. The peace that followed the Yujin Vong War and Cetus's defeat was superficial, constantly threatened by burgeoning regional conflicts, economic collapse, and a disturbing rise in dark side cult activity. The Force itself felt unwell, rippling, with unexplained anomalies and surges that defied traditional Jedi analysis. It was as if the very fabric of existence was groaning under the weight of so much recent suffering and the unresolved darkness left in its wake. This increasing instability proved to be fertile ground for ancient evils to stir and for new, frightening alliances to begin to form in secret. The Jedi faced a foe unlike any before, the chilling unknown, as Luke and Ben pursued their investigations. Their path led them to remote, forgotten corners of the galaxy, places where the Force flowed in strange and often disturbing ways. They encountered ancient prophecies, unsettling Force visions, and whispers of powers that predated the Jedi and Sith as they knew them. Each clue drew them deeper into mysteries that had remained dormant for millennia, hinting at threats far more primordial than any they had yet faced. The galaxy's woes, it seemed, were not merely political or military. They were metaphysical, spiritual, a cosmic ailment that threatened to unravel the very nature of the Force itself. Their quest for answers was slowly revealing that the universe held secrets that even the wisest Jedi had only glimpsed. Luke and Ben's relentless pursuit of answers eventually led them to a startling and terrifying discovery: the lost tribe of the Sith. This ancient Sith faction had been stranded on the hidden planet of Kesh during the hyperspace wars, millennia before the rise of the original Sith empires known to galactic history. Cut off from the rest of the galaxy, they had evolved in isolation, maintaining their Sith traditions, their dark side powers, and their rigid caste-based society. They were a remnant of a brutal past, a living fossil of ancient Sith cruelty, utterly devoid of any contact with the rule of two or the events that had shaped the galaxy since their abandonment. Their sudden rediscovery, facilitated by a Force anomaly related to Jacen's fall, was a profound shock to the Jedi and a terrifying reintroduction of a previously unknown strain of Sith power. The Lost Tribe was led by a council of powerful, Sith Lords, each a master of the dark side, steeped in ancient rituals and practices long forgotten by the modern galaxy. Their philosophy was one of absolute domination, unburdened by the specific doctrines of Darth Bane's rule of two. They saw themselves as the true inheritors of the Sith legacy, untainted by millennia of external galactic influence. Their isolation had preserved their original ferocity and ambition, making them an unpredictable and incredibly dangerous force. Their re-emergence immediately added a new, terrifying dimension to the galaxy's already burgeoning Force-related crises. They sought to reclaim their place in the galaxy, beginning with subtle infiltration and manipulation. The discovery of the lost tribe of the Sith was merely the prelude to an even more terrifying revelation. Their re-emergence was linked to a deeper, more insidious threat, one that transcended the conventional understanding of dark-side users or even Sith Lords. Luke and Ben, along with other Jedi and allies, soon realized that the lost tribe had inadvertently awakened an eldritch force entity of immense, terrifying power. This entity, known as Abeloth, was a being from beyond the known realms of existence. It's a primordial force demon who had long been imprisoned within the maelstrom of the Maul cluster, a chaotic nexus of black holes and gravitational anomalies. Abeloth was not a Sith, nor was she bound by mortal concepts of light or dark. She was a manifestation of chaos, a being of pure force energy that fed on suffering and instability. Her very presence caused the force itself to distort and ripple with madness. Her awakening unleashed a wave of terrifying force anomalies across the galaxy, affecting force sensitives in unpredictable and often catastrophic ways. The Jedi faced a foe unlike any before, a non-corporeal entity that could possess individuals, manipulate minds on a galactic scale, and twist the force itself into instruments of her terrifying will. Her powers were beyond comprehension, making her an enemy that could not be fought with lightsabers or starships alone. The immediate consequence of Paula's return was a terrifying increase in Jedi struggle with madness and corruption. Many force sensitives, both within the Jedi Order and outside it, began to experience terrifying visions, erratic behavior, and succumb to inexplicable fits of rage or despair. The Force, once a source of clarity and strength, now seemed tainted, whispering dark thoughts and driving some to the brink of insanity. Powerful Jedi found themselves battling their own minds, struggling to maintain their sanity and their connection to the light amidst the pervasive mental assault unleashed by Abeloth. This widespread psychological warfare threatened to dismantle the Jedi Order from within, forcing them to confront their own vulnerabilities. The Force itself, once seen as a unifying cosmic power, now seemed to be fragmenting under the immense strain of these ancient awakenings. The Jedi faced a multifaceted crisis, a re-emerged ancient Sith civilization in the Lost Tribe, a primordial Force entity in Abeloth, and the pervasive corruption spreading amongst Force sensitives. This unprecedented combination of threats forced the Jedi to confront the limits of their knowledge and the true depths of the Force's mysteries. They had to learn to adapt to a reality where the very Force they wielded could become a source of madness and destruction. In the midst of this escalating chaos, and distinct from the Lost Tribe, the seeds of another, more unified dark side movement were secretly being sown, though not yet fully emerged or publicly known during the initial events of Abeloth's awakening. The underlying galactic instability and the constant ebb and flow of dark side energies created a fertile environment for future, organized Sith resurgence. This refers to the eventual formation of the One Sith in secret under Darth Krayt, a figure who, though not active in the current timeline, represented a future, terrifying evolution of Sith ambition. These new movements, operating in extreme secrecy, were meticulously building their power base, learning from past Sith failures and patiently waiting for the opportune moment to strike, feeding on the galaxy's woes Their existence, largely unknown to the Jedi at this time, underscored the pervasive, enduring nature of the dark side, adapting and evolving with each passing era. The increasing instability across the galaxy was palpable. The Galactic Alliance, still struggling to recover from the previous wars, found itself battling not only traditional conflicts, but also inexplicable Force-related incidents, outbreaks of madness, and the subtle manipulations of both the lost tribe of the Sith and Abeloth. Governments teetered on the brink of collapse. Trade routes became dangerous, and public trust in both the Jedi and the Galactic Alliance waned. The very concept of order seemed to be unraveling, replaced by a growing sense of dread and powerlessness. The Jedi, once seen as saviors, now faced suspicion, their mysterious ways seemingly unable to stem the tide of madness and corruption. Luke and Ben's quest became intertwined with a broader galactic struggle. They sought not only to understand Jason's fall, but also to find a way to contain or defeat Abeloth. Their journey led them to ancient Force sites, forgotten worlds, and even into the deeper, stranger realms of the Force itself. They encountered powerful, morally ambiguous Force users who offered cryptic advice, and faced desperate situations that pushed their own Force abilities to their absolute limits, the boundaries of what they thought possible. What they thought they knew about the Force were constantly being shattered. The Jedi Order, meanwhile, under the interim leadership of various masters, struggled to hold itself together. They implemented new protocols to identify and quarantine Force sensitives afflicted by the madness, and tirelessly worked to understand the source of the Force's corruption. This period was one of profound introspection for the Jedi, forcing them to question long-held beliefs and to reevaluate their approach to the Force and their role in the galaxy. They learned that the greatest threats were not always obvious, and that sometimes the unknown was the most terrifying adversary of all. The conflict with Abeloth and the lost tribe of the Sith brought the Jedi to the brink of spiritual collapse. The sheer scale of the cosmic forces involved, and the insidious nature of the madness affecting Force sensitives, tested their resolve like never before. The lines between allies and enemies blurred as individuals succumbed to Abeloth's influence, turning against their friends and families. The very air seemed to crackle with dark energy. A pervasive sense of despair settling over many Force sensitives across the galaxy. This was a war, not just for physical territory, but for the very minds and souls of those connected to the Force. The desperate effort to contain Abeloth and neutralize the lost tribe of the Sith required the Jedi to form uneasy alliances and make difficult, morally ambiguous choices. They were forced to cooperate with individuals and groups they once would have considered too dangerous or too morally compromised. The threat was so immense that old rivalries and prejudices had to be set aside for the sake of galactic survival. Luke and Ben Skywalker, having gained unique insights into the nature of the dark side and Abeloth's origins, became central figures in planning the counteroffensive. Their understanding, forged through personal tragedy and years of relentless pursuit, proved invaluable. The climax of the conflict involved a direct confrontation with Abeloth in her ancient prison within the Maul cluster, a place saturated with the dark side. It required a combination of immense Force power, cunning strategy, and the courage to face an entity that defied conventional understanding. The Jedi learned that some threats could not be simply destroyed. They had to be contained, imprisoned, or neutralized through intricate manipulation of the Force itself. The struggle against Abeloth pushed the boundaries of Force knowledge and demonstrated the Jedi's capacity for immense power when united against a common, terrifying foe. The defeat of Abeloth and the containment of the lost tribe of the Sith, though arduous, brought a semblance of temporary stability back to the Force. However, events had irrevocably changed the galaxy and the Jedi Order. Luke Skywalker's exile eventually ended, but the experience had reshaped his perception of his role as Grand Master teaching him harsh lessons about the dangers of centralized power and the pervasive nature of the dark side. Ben Skywalker emerged as a hardened, wise Jedi Knight forever, marked by his journey and his understanding of the Force's mysterious depths. The Jedi Order, while still rebuilding, was now more resilient, more adaptable, acutely aware of the unpredictable and ancient evils that lurked within and beyond the known universe. The period of the Lost Tribe in Abeloth underscored that the galaxy's future would always be precarious. The threat of ancient Sith resurfacing, the rise of powerful, chaotic Force entities, and the insidious corruption of the dark side were constant dangers. The seeds of new dark side movements, like the secretly growing One Sith under Darth Krayt, lay dormant, feeding on a lingering instability, waiting for their own moment to emerge. The Jedi, having faced the unknown and battled madness itself, understood that their vigil was eternal, and that the fate of the galaxy often rested on their ability to navigate the complex, fracturing currents of the Force, forever standing as the last bastion against the pervasive shadows of the past and the terrifying uncertainties of the future. Chapter 10. Legacy. The future written in blood. More than a century and a quarter had passed since the climactic Battle of Endor, an era marked by galactic rebuilding, the ebb and flow of political power, and the quiet vigilance of the Jedi Order. The Galactic Alliance, forged in the fires of the Yujin Vong War, had slowly transitioned over generations into a new form of governance, influenced by a restored, benevolent imperial lineage, the Fel Empire. This was not the tyranny of Palpatine, but an imperial state reformed, committed to order and justice, and surprisingly, in alliance with the re-established Jedi Order. A fragile, yet enduring, peace seemed to have settled over the galaxy. However, underneath this veneer of stability, an ancient evil had been patiently cultivating its power, its tendrils reaching out from the deepest shadows, preparing for an ultimate strike that would redefine the very nature of galactic power and the Force itself. This insidious threat was the One Sith, a dark side order unlike any that had come before. They rejected the ancient rule of two, believing it led to unnecessary infighting and ultimately limited their power. Instead, the One Sith embraced a philosophy of absolute unity under a single, supreme Dark Lord, with all others serving as loyal extensions of his will. Their goal was not just conquest, but eternal, unquestioned rule over the entire galaxy, reshaping it according to their own twisted vision. Their power was not derived from secret manipulations, but from overt control, ruthlessly enforced by a vast legion of darkside adepts. At the head of this terrifying new order stood Darth Krayt, a figure whose past was as complex and tragic as the galaxy he sought to dominate. He was once a Jedi Master named Asherad Het, a skilled human Jedi Knight who had fought bravely in the Clone Wars. He had survived Order 66, endured years of brutal survival in the Outer Rim, and even confronted the remnants of the ancient Sith, including their spirit on Korriban. His experiences had shattered his faith in the Jedi path and twisted his perception of the Force. He believed that the galaxy needed a strong hand, a unified will to prevent endless cycles of chaos and war. He saw himself as the one true savior, destined to impose absolute order through the dark side, forging a new Sith empire that would never fall. Krayt spent decades secretly gathering Force sensitives, training them in his brutal philosophy, and building his One Sith into a formidable, disciplined army of Darksiders. They established hidden fortresses, infiltrated existing galactic institutions, and waited for the opportune moment to strike. Their patience was absolute, their planning meticulous, and their ruthlessness unmatched. While the Galactic Alliance and the Fel Empire enjoyed their relative peace, the One Sith quietly accumulated power, a dark storm brewing on the horizon. The unsuspecting Fel Empire, which had ushered in an era of order and cooperation with the Jedi, was about to face the ultimate betrayal. The One Sith, having infiltrated key positions within the government and military, launched a sudden, devastating offensive that caught the galaxy entirely by surprise. Their plan was not merely to defeat the Fel Empire, but to utterly collapse the Fel Empire and achieve total galactic domination through betrayal by the Sith from within. The Jedi, though allied with the Fel Empire, were scattered and unprepared for the sheer scale and coordinated brutality of the One Sith assault. The collapse of the Fel Empire was swift and brutal, a horrifying spectacle of treachery and overwhelming dark side power. The One Sith launched a devastating surprise attack on key Imperial worlds, particularly targeting Jedi temples and strategic strongholds. The infamous siege of Aziz, a planet sacred to the Jedi for millennia, became a symbol of this cataclysm. The Jedi, caught off guard, fought valiantly, but were overwhelmed by the sheer numbers of the One Sith and the ferocity of Darth Krayt's dark side warriors. Many Jedi fell, their ancient temples desecrated, and their knowledge plundered. The alliance between the Fel Empire and the Jedi, once a beacon of hope, crumbled under the weight of this overwhelming assault. With the Fel Empire fractured and the Jedi decimated, the Jedi were scattered and the galaxy plunged into chaos. Surviving Jedi Knights and Masters were forced into hiding, hunted relentlessly by Darth Krayt's forces. The dream of a rebuilt Jedi Order, nurtured for over a century, seemed to be extinguished in a single, devastating stroke. Alliance, which had been gradually subsumed by the Fel Empire, now found itself facing a tyrannical power far more absolute than Palpatine's, with no viable resistance force to protect its citizens. Darth Krayt declared himself Galactic Emperor, imposing his will through brutal force and pervasive fear in this grim new reality. One name resonated with a haunting legacy: Skywalker. And yet, the reluctant heir to this legendary name was perhaps the least likely hero. Cade Skywalker, a direct descendant of Luke Skywalker in the Solo family line, was a far cry from his illustrious ancestors. He was a deeply troubled young man, haunted by a past he desperately tried to escape. After witnessing the slaughter of his Jedi Master and many friends during the siege of Aziz, Cade had abandoned the Force, choosing a life as a rough, cynical bounty hunter. He medicated his Force abilities with powerful stimulants, trying to suppress the painful echoes of the past and the expectations of his lineage. Cade despised the Force, blamed it for all the suffering he had endured, and rejected his destiny. As a Jedi, he wanted nothing to do with the war against the One Sith, preferring to drift through the galaxy, taking jobs and living for himself. However, fate and the persistent efforts of his loyal allies and remaining Jedi continually pulled him back into the struggle. Despite his resistance, the Force flowed strongly within him, and his unique heritage meant he was often the target of Darth Krayt, who sought to either corrupt him to his cause or destroy him as a potential threat. Krayt believed that controlling or eliminating the Skywalker's bloodline was essential for his eternal rule. The One Sith and their plan for eternal rule was now fully implemented. Under Darth Krayt's iron fist, the galaxy was subjected to a chillingly efficient tyranny. Krayt established a network of loyal Sith Lords and Dark Jedi, each commanding legions of stormtroopers and holding absolute power over their assigned sectors. Dissent was crushed mercilessly, and even the slightest hint of rebellion was met with overwhelming force. Their plan was not just about establishing a new empire, but about creating a permanent, challengeable galactic order, free from the cycles of rebellion and collapse that had defined history. Krayt believed that his unified Sith order, unburdened by the rule of two, was the ultimate stable form of governance. The reign of Darth Krayt and the One Sith plunged the galaxy into its deepest period of despair since the darkest days of Palpatine's empire. Worlds were subjugated, freedoms were crushed, and a pervasive fear settled over the populace. The very concept of hope seemed to wither under the weight of the One Sith's omnipresent dark side influence. Krayt, twisted by his agonizing personal history and decades of cultivating dark side power, ruled with an absolute conviction in his own righteousness. He genuinely believed that his brutal methods were necessary for the galaxy's ultimate salvation, a twisted reflection of his past Jedi ideals. Amidst this overwhelming darkness, the scattered Jedi maintained a desperate, clandestine resistance, operating from hidden bases and relying on a network of sympathetic allies. They worked to rescue Force sensitives, preserve ancient Jedi knowledge, and inspire acts of defiance against the One Sith. Figures like Master Cole Skywalker, an earlier ancestor of Kade's, and later the remnants of the Jedi High Council, valiantly tried to organize a counterattack, but their numbers were few and their resources limited. Their struggle was one of survival, fiercely guarding the last embers of light in a galaxy consumed by shadow. Kade Skywalker, despite his profound reluctance, found himself increasingly drawn into this resistance. His unique ability to use the Force to heal, a rare and powerful gift, made him invaluable, even as he resented its demands. He carried the weight of his lineage, not as a source of pride, but as a heavy burden. He clashed repeatedly with Darth Krayt and his Sith lords, not out of a sense of Jedi duty, but often out of personal vendetta, seeking revenge for those he had lost. His journey was a tumultuous one, marked by repeated brushes with the dark side, as Krayt sought to corrupt him, believing Kade's immense power would be a perfect tool for his. One Sith, Krayt's plan for eternal rule was not merely theoretical, it was actively being enforced. He sought to eliminate any potential threats, including the very idea of a free galaxy. He used advanced technology and pervasive Force techniques to monitor and control populations. His Sith lords were granted immense authority, acting as enforcers of his will. The galaxy became a vast, interconnected prison with the One Sith as its unchallengeable wardens. The cultural and social norms of countless worlds were systematically dismantled, replaced by the rigid doctrines of Krayt's new order. The internal struggles within Kade Skywalker were as intense as the external war against the One Sith. He wrestled constantly with his inherited predisposition to the dark side, a painful legacy from his direct ancestor, Darth Vader. He utilized dark side powers when he deemed it necessary for survival or to achieve a goal. Yet, he always ultimately resisted succumbing completely, pulling himself back from the precipice through sheer force of will and the desperate love he held for his few remaining friends and family. He was a chaotic, unpredictable force, a true maverick, embodying both the light and the dark, yet ultimately choosing to fight for freedom. His internal conflict mirrored the galaxy's struggle for its soul. The stage was set for the final battle between Kade and Krayt. The galaxy, battered and bruised, looked to its unlikely hero. Kade, having finally embraced his destiny not as a conventional Jedi, but as a unique instrument of the Force, confronted the tyrannical Darth Krayt. This was not just a duel for personal vengeance, it was a climactic confrontation for the very soul of the galaxy, a final desperate attempt to break the One Sith's eternal rule. The fight would determine whether hope could truly survive in a galaxy steeped in so much darkness. The confrontation took place in a setting as grand and symbolic as their personal struggle. Darth Krayt, fully embracing his identity as an emperor, faced Kade Skywalker, the embodiment of a lineage that repeatedly rose to challenge tyranny. Their duel was a devastating display of raw Force power and lightsaber mastery. Krayt, ancient and deeply steeped in the dark side, unleashed every terrifying power at his command, attempting to crush Kade with the weight of his own despair and his family's painful legacy. Kade, fueled by a chaotic mix of anger, defiance, and a grudging sense of justice, met Krayt's fury with an unpredictable, unorthodox fighting style, drawing on both his light and dark side impulses without succumbing to either. In a brutal, prolonged engagement, Krayt Skywalker ultimately triumphed. He used his unique healing abilities not just for others, but for himself, pushing his body and his connection to the Force to their absolute limits. He exploited Krayt's overconfidence and his own unique connection to the Force, honed by years of struggle and self-hatred. The defeat of Darth Krayt marked a pivotal moment, a shattering blow to the One Sith's aspirations for eternal rule. His empire fractured, its power base undermined, and its reign of terror began to unravel, though the scars of their rule would linger for generations. The end of Darth Krayt's tyranny brought a new era of reconstruction and a cautious return to galactic self-determination. The surviving Jedi began the arduous task of rebuilding their order once more, having learned invaluable lessons from their near annihilation. Krayt Skywalker, having fulfilled his destiny, once again retreated from the spotlight, his path remaining his own, choosing to live on the fringes, forever the reluctant hero. He had played his part in turning the tide against the darkness, but he was no Grand Master, no symbol of a reborn order. He was simply Krayt, the Skywalker who had saved the galaxy in his own messy, unconventional way. And so, the end of the Skywalker line, or is it, with Krayt Skywalker choosing a path outside the traditional Jedi Order? The fate of the powerful Force-sensitive lineage that had shaped galactic history for centuries became ambiguous. Would new Skywalker descendants eventually emerge, once again drawn into the eternal struggle of the Force? Or would the legacy simply fade, having served its purpose in delivering the galaxy from the darkest of tyrannies? The future remained unwritten, a testament to the fact that even after grand conflicts and the fall of empires, the story of the galaxy and the Force that binds it continues to unfold, forever evolving, forever pushing towards an uncertain dawn. From the nascent days of the New Republic, rising from the ashes of tyranny, through the strategic brilliance of Grand Admiral Thrawn, the horrifying returns of galactic emperors and ancient dark side powers, to the existential terror of extragalactic invaders and the tragic fall of a Skywalker to the deepest shadows, the Star Wars Legends saga unfurls a sprawling, epic tapestry. It's a chronicle of relentless struggle between light and dark, testament to the enduring resilience of the Jedi, and a powerful narrative of a galaxy forever shaped by heroism, sacrifice, and the unbreakable spirit of freedom, across countless stars and through generations of conflict and peace. This legacy reminds us that while darkness may rise, the Force always seeks balance. In the fight for hope, though eternally challenging, will never truly end.